Okay, we should be live. Thank you everyone for coming. Let me just turn some button pressing. We're going to try this again, but we're going to try and make it a lot more simple and hopefully a bit shorter as well. I appreciate those who came last time, and I apologize for just running away with it, trying to cram in too much and overload people um, with stuff that's taken me a couple of years to like wrap my heads around. So it was very unfair of me to expect every one of you to be instantaneously understanding it. So dial it back a bit, Billy. Take it in more gently. I'll address a couple of comments, but then I'm not gonna really be able to keep track of it. So, Gil, I hope I'm saying that right. Um, Thank you for being here. Kush, I see that you say you've done some MBTI test, and it turns out you're an INTJ. Cool. If this is true, accurate, because then we'll be able to have fun bouncing the different personality types off one another, and that in a way makes understanding a lot easier when you can relate it to other people. Um, and I should like preface this by saying that the whole reason why I'm bringing this MBTI subject up is actually for a different purpose. It's in order to, at some point in the near future, for us to be able to hack into understanding trauma, and then we can deal with things like trauma, PTSD, anxiety, depression, suicidal tendencies or ideations, and some of these other negative things that trouble men and women and whoever else, um, to have that kind of understanding. But before we can get to that point, I need to have people understanding this idea of cognitive functions. So this is why we're discussing MBTI. We don't really need to get into the nuts and bolts of it. So this session this evening is going to omit quite a lot of MBTI stuff. Like, we don't really need to get into function stacks, and we don't really need to get into what these letters like INTJ mean and all that. In a nutshell, the takeaway from this stream will be the understanding and awareness that we have functions. In particular, we have cognitive functions, and that there's more to how we, more components to how we derive our line of logic. I will describe it at some point later on how it's kind of like a factory. You got what goes in, you got workstations that you delegate different tasks to, and then you've got the end result, what comes out of the factory. And I just want us to have an awareness that that is kind of like how our mind operates. And when we have that understanding, we can then look at the manufacturing process of our thoughts and see where we are falling short. So I've done a little bit of, I'm going to have to bring up a few diagrams like last time, but I've done a little bit of tweaking to them. So bear with me while I share the screen. So I'll go into a little bit of detail for those who are kind of interested and want a bit more of a deeper understanding, but don't fret too much if these are hard concepts or you're getting a little bit lost. It is totally understandable. So how am I going to see? Maybe at some point I should have two monitors. Okay, you should be seeing my screen here. Can you see my cursor? All right. Now, we have the brain, components of the brain. There are many departments. You have parts of your brain which are dedicated for your vision, parts that are dedicated for facial recognition, parts that are dedicated for motor actions, parts that are dedicated for judgment, the prefrontal cortex, language, all sorts of components to your brain. But when it comes to what we're talking about here, we're talking about the cognitive functions. And so these are generally divided into two categories: judging and perceiving. And they can kind of be called like coins sometimes as well, just to be a bit more irritating for people. Judging is like you're deciding, and perceiving is like you're observing. So these get subdivided, and here we start seeing um, basically four main groups of cognition. So on the left, we have T for thinking and F for feeling. These are both deciding functions, and you can look at this as two sides of the same coin. The coin is called the judging coin. One side is thinking, and the other side is feeling. So they are linked. They're joined. You can't have one without the other. Where it becomes a bit different in people is which side of the coin do they look at the most? Do they like looking at their thinking side? Do they value that side more than their feeling side? And the same goes with this other coin called the perceiving, or your observation coin, where that has two sides to it as well: sensing and intuition. And they're kind of like opposites as well. Opposites of heads is tails, opposite of tails is heads. So the opposite of thinking is feeling, and the opposite of sensing is intuition, and vice versa. And judging and perceiving are also a coin in of itself. One side is your judging sort of side of the coin, and the other side is your perceiving side of the coin. Okay, I'll slow down because already I'm like, okay, slow down. All right. So so they're linked. This link is also known as an axis. I'm going to have a couple of other slides to present, which will basically show the same information, but just in a different kind of layout to make it maybe easier. So you can see how the same information can be presented in different ways in terms of hopefully making it easier to interpret. So a couple of definitions. These are just loose. These can be subjects or streams for another day, going into more depth. But the general idea of your thinking function, it deals with calculations and your reasoning. It likes to focus on doing things that work, the practicality of stuff, the functionality of stuff. It doesn't really care about the values or which is morally right or wrong. It's a calculating machine. It just wants input and data. Think of data from Star Trek, if the Next Generation. It's just cold calculating, very clinical, and you could say like sterile in its judgments. It's not particularly bothered about nuances. It's not particularly bothered about other areas of cognition, because the other areas of cognition, that's what their role. That's why they're there. They're there to deal with that stuff. So thinking is pure kind of mathematical. What works? Methodical, efficiency, practicalities, getting jobs done. Great for business environments, for example. Your feeling, in contrast, on the other side of this axis, this seesaw balance, this coin, the other consideration is dealing with the values, the emotions, your likes and dislikes. So, for example, food is a good example here. You like bacon. Well, thinking will say that doesn't really make any logical sense. Food is food. It doesn't matter what you eat. You could eat anything as long as it's nutrition. Doesn't care about what you like. It will just put food in your mouth. But then your feelings will say, no, but I don't like carrots. I like bacon, so I want bacon. So you see how feelings, your likes, can outweigh your thinking sometimes, and for a good, fair enough reason, like because you want bacon or something. I want chocolate or whatever. It doesn't have to have a reason. That's for thinking. Thinking is having reason. Feeling is having value. What I like, what I don't like. So the so as a definition or a distinction that you need to be paying attention to when you're saying things to one another or to yourself, or when you're hearing something, is this something that is to do with work, or is this something to do with what's right? And that'll help you differentiate between someone's thinking and their feeling. So the thinking and feeling, this this forms together the judging coin. Now let's deal with your perceiving coin. This is how you see the world around you. This is your experience of life. So sensing deals more with data, facts, proof, receipts, real world experiences. It's literally your five senses: your hearing, sight, sound, taste, smell, and it has a pretty good memory compared to the other functions. So it likes details. It wants when it comes to starting a business, sensing is what these investors, they want to see. What are your charts, what are your records? Show me the proof. I want to see tangible results. I don't care about the feelings. I don't care about the logical processing that's going behind everything. I want to see the numbers. So that's purely sensing. And so sensing, it can see the trees but it can't see the forest, right? So sensing sees the detail. It cares about the nitty gritties. The proof is in the pudding. Intuition is the other side, where it can't see the trees. It can't see. It doesn't really care about the details. It's more of the concept, the overall picture, the agenda, the master plan, the imagination, the patterns, how things connect together. It is about predictions. It's about running simulations and figuring out the possible outcomes or hurdles further down the road. So it's got this kind of connotation with fortune telling or seeing the future, or some people take it even further and say mystical stuff, because it's like, oh, how did you know that was going to happen? It's like you read my mind, or you read the future. Wrong. All that has happened is that intuition is running these simulations, playing out scenarios of what if this, what if that, and is working out of probability which is likely to happen. So that's the balance between sensing and intuition, and together that is what we call your perceiving coin. Right, I'll take a moment to breathe. Hopefully, we're all still with us. Okay. So we've got a judging coin, we've got a perceiving coin, and those are subdivided to give us a wider spectrum. Okay, so let's get rid of this one here. Where's the brain? All right, I tweaked the brain one. You might have saw this on the last one. I've changed it up a little bit. So where's my mouse cursor? Wake up, mouse. Where is it gone? Let me grab something I can. There we go. Right. So if we divide the brain up into 4 areas: thinking, intuition at the front, sensing, and feeling at the back. And this coin idea, this pairing up, this team working, you can swap out the players in a way. So we'll see here that thinking and feeling are both judging. So I've shaded it kind of purple. And intuition and sensing are both perceiving, and I've shaded that kind of orange. Now, to get the most bang for your buck, you would run one of your perceiving, let's say intuition in this case, with one of your judging, either thinking or feeling. It doesn't really matter which, but you would tag team one perceiving with one judging, and that would leave the other two remaining as a tag team team of their own. So you got a backup system, you got a co-pilot, you got a second team, which is having best of both um, types of cognitive functions. Now, there'll be times when you might want to swap the players in these teams around for for particular situations. But to give you an idea how they can influence one another, let's say you have sensing teaming up with feeling, and they're trying to debate intuition teaming up with thinking. Well, a caricature example of this would be is this the right? No, sorry. If you have NF, yeah, if you have NF teaming up, these two teaming up, they would come across to you like a hippie, someone who's very feely and has a vision of seeing the stars, right? So easy to imagine that these two paired together would produce someone who would appear quite like a hippie. And then battling against someone who is using a lot of thinking and they're sensing details and facts and proof. This would be a hard nut of a like a boss. No space for imagination or feelings. We want to get the job done. Here are the facts and numbers. Get it done. I don't care about your excuses. So here you got a hard nut versus a hippie. I'm trying to be mindful of not sounding like a complete lunatic here. But again, don't get too bogged down by this. So let me get rid of this. The takeaway, the idea here, what I'm explaining is that you've got different sections of your mind that are delegated to handle different types of information. And there is this inner dialogue going on inside your head of how you process this information, come to a decision, and then carry it out into the rest of the world. So this is the INFJ's cognitive function stack. A lot of you say you're INFJ, so this should apply to a lot of you listening. Different types will have different arrangements. The big yellow is function 1. The not so big red is number 2. Smaller is 3. That's thinking. And the last one, sensing, very small. You'll see, as we mentioned before, that they're linked, that they're on this axis. So you'll see that T and F are joined, and they're opposites. And an N and S are joined, and they're opposites. So there's 2 axes here. And remember that picture of the brain, the 4 corners of your mind? Well, this is basically the same of what's going on there. We are looking at the 4 corners of the INFJ's mind. And for the INFJ and the INTJ, they have introverted intuition or intuition. We won't bother with introverts and extroverts at this stage, really. We don't need to. but just N, right? They've got intuition as number one. They're visionaries. They look at patterns and connections most of all. And you'll notice as a baby, they don't really care about the details. They're not interested in the details. As long as the vision, the master plan carries out, it doesn't matter how we get there. So I'll do a little reenactment of what was happening in the last stream. Now, let me see here. Oh, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Oops. Right. Okay. So last time we did a stream. Yeah, here we go. Right. Bing. Right. The intuition part of my mind lit up saying, right, we've got this idea. It would be good if everyone knows about this idea that we have so that we can then later on do other things with it. Okay. That's the master plan. Okay, right. Effie, go tell the tribe. So Effie gets handed the work. It's your job now to communicate this vision to everyone else. The thinking part says, this is too much. You can try, but it ain't going to work. Effie says, don't worry about it. I've got it covered. We're going to go ahead and do it. So we did a stream. And TI is warning, saying, whoa, too much information. NI is barking down, hey, get everyone to see this vision. So Effie is feeling the pressure. Effie says, right, we're going to do the stream. You know, we're just going to gung-ho it. Later on, NE says to Effie, so what happened? How did it go? Effie turns around and says, well, I think everyone got confused. I think we overloaded them. I think we rushed through too much information. Essie chimes in and says, maybe it was the slides. Maybe if we have a glowing circle, that would help next time. But yeah, the data shows that people were confused and overwhelmed by the details. And I doesn't like SE very much and says, I don't like you. You guys have failed. We're going to have to do this again. So TI will then say, see, I told you it was too much. FP will say, okay, I'll dial it down and we'll go for a second try. Now learning the lessons from before and trying to get harmony so that everyone is working in synchronicity. So this is the kind of mental gymnastics that we're playing out. Something like that anyway. So that's the INFJ right now. Brace yourselves. Don't get, this is going to look a bit, but don't worry. Look, okay. Here I've got displayed are four. Now, why is it the INFJ is not appearing? There it is. So here are four different people. The INFJ compared to the INTJ, and there's another two types here for fun. And this is where you'll see compatibility and similarities and differences. So with the INFJ up here, and look at the INTJ below, you will notice that both the INFJ, right, they have NI there and they have SE here. Well, the INTJ has the exact same pair in the exact same position. So they see eye to eye. And they have the same kind of weakness or inferior function. Where they differ is the INFJ has FE there in a second position, whereas the INTJ has thinking in their second position. And you see how it's swapped around. That doesn't mean they're totally opposite in a sense. They are kind of opposite, but this balance isn't as bad as it may seem. The middle two functions, you balance them out pretty well. So for the INFJ and the INTJ, and actually the other two as well, their thinking and their feeling is pretty well balanced out. The most imbalance is your first and your fourth function. So in this case, for the INFJ, it's their intuition, and the INTJ, it's their intuition and sensing. You'll notice that this axis is longer. It's more out of balance. They're further apart than the second and third function. The second and third function are a lot closer together. They're a lot more balanced. So they don't really have a problem with their identity as such. Their problem is the imbalance between their vision and being grounded with reality, the facts. The vision, the future-minded the orientation doesn't care about the details. It sees the forest, doesn't really care about the trees. And the sensing says, yeah, but you're going to need to see the trees. You can't have a vision without seeing the trees. So that's the problem they have. So you can see how the INFJ is similar, but has a little bit of a difference with the INTJ. Now, the INFJ and the ISFJ, so over here on the right. Let me get rid of these glowy things. All right. Now, the INFJ and the ISFJ both share feeling and thinking in the exact same position, and it's the exact same type. So they see eye to eye very similarly with their feelings and how they think. They're like cousins. And where they differ is, instead of inferior sensing, the ISFJ has it as their dominant function. So they're all about the details. They love the details. They love the record keeping, the statistics, the facts, the proof, the receipts. They are all about that. They're just terrible with having a vision. They don't know what to do with that information. They're not very good fortune tellers or predictors or thinking about the consequences of actions. They don't really look ahead. They're too busy in the fine details of the here and now. So if you really wanted to get a good mental development, what I'm saying here, if you're an INFJ, you would look for someone such as an ISFJ who could help you with their dominant function, SI, to help guide your inferior function, SE, because it's malnourished, it's underweight, it's tiny, it's an inferior function. You're crap at SE. So if you could find someone who has it higher up in their stack of functions, like as a dominant function, or ISTJ, they can help you out with your inferior function. They'll help this to grow. When this grows, the dominant function will shrink a little bit. And so you create a balance. You don't have one function that is on steroids, outperforming everything else. You can't go around life like that. This is where the idea of be your own hero, you need to be a bit more astute what you mean by that, because if you be your own hero means run to your dominant function to save you because your dominant function is on steroids, then you're going to create a more of an imbalance. This is a problem. Your real hero's journey is growing that inferior function, this baby here. That is where your weakness is. So that's for the INFJ and the INTJ. Same advice. They got the same weakness. It's that details of reality. The ISTJ and the ISFJ, their weakness is the intuition. So it would do them good to find people like an INFJ or like an INTJ who will help grow their intuition. And we can see how for the INFJ and INTJ, their intuition is, overgrown. They've got plenty. They've got far too much intuition, more than necessary. So we can see how a good pairing up of people can help teach one another where their weaknesses are and how they can improve upon them. All four of these here don't need to really worry about their thinking or their feeling. They all got basically the same thinking and feeling. It's in the similar position, second and third, and it's pretty well balanced. Their biggest issue in life will be the first and fourth, and that will be with all types, your first and your fourth. And these are just 4 of the 16 personality types. So I couldn't be bothered to draw out the other 12. But it's the same, if you know what it is, if you know your stack, look at your first, look at your fourth, right? Pay attention to your fourth, and that's where you're going to need to improve upon. Maybe it might be a feeling here and a thinking up here, so that's generally the gist of this conversation. Let me just check my notes, make sure. So you don't need to worry about the intricacies of what we've been discussing. You just need to be aware that you have a system. There is a balance between thinking one way and another way. And there's more than one system at play. And this is where you probably find you encounter problems at some point in life. When everything is good in the hood and going as it should, you don't really have any problems. And so this is why when you're younger, you don't really notice it. It's when you're older that your system starts to crumble and the imbalances start to present. They start to really be obvious. And because normally, no one's really taught this at school, but because you're not taught how to balance these things out, people will tend, like, we'll go back to the INFJ as an example. Let me get rid of some of these glowy things. Right. So, okay. So here's a scenario, right? The INFJ goes around thinking, right, I've got this vision in life. I live on a farm. I want to have 20 babies. I want to get married. I want to have dogs, cats, cows, and all this. I want to have my own business. I want to have a boat. I have all this, big dreams and adventures, right? Sensing comes along and says, that ain't gonna happen. You don't have money in the bank. You haven't met anyone. You don't have any farm. You got nothing. Like you're dreaming basically. So there's a dissonance, right? There's a disconnect. You got your fantasy, you got your vision, and you got reality. They're not agreeing with one another. And so, without being aware of what you need to really do, you run to your air quotes hero thinking, well, I'll just dream harder and make my dreams come into reality. I will force my vision into reality. And that doesn't work. All that's going to happen is you make this cancerous, and it becomes malignant, overgrown. Now you're becoming way disproportionate, and you become even more disconnected and further away from reality. So you see how trying to address this by doubling down isn't really the way. You're making matters worse for yourself. What you need to do is listen to that inferior function. This starts saying to you, hey, can you be a bit more realistic here? Can you maybe not have such lofty dreams? be happy if you have your own place and have a business. We'll start small, work from there, lower your expectations a bit. Then you can have a more realistic reality. And then so when you do use your intuition, it is based more on realistic data. You're not dreaming delusions, you're actually dreaming of potential ambitions. They're realistic expectations as opposed to unrealistic expectations. And so they become more balanced out. That's the idea of what's going on here. And this system failure is where this conversation is really heading towards. Because all these functions of your mind, these different departments, these different workstations, which you delegate tasks to, you're all supposed to be working together as a team. And when you do that, you're working with complete awareness. You're using all your mental faculties. You're much more complete. So the system, when it's imbalanced, is not going to work very well, and things will become unstable. And it will have a knock-on effect where everything starts to go out of whack. And being the observer that I am, this is the major issue I'm seeing with a lot of people. Their thinking and their feelings aren't lining up. Their dreams and their real life statistics sorry, excuse me, don't match up. And so there's a lot of imbalance. Here comes another sneeze. Hold on. All right, sorry. And this is also a bit like yin and yang, male and female. You'll see how these opposites of the coins complement each other. This isn't really, let's take feeling and thinking as an example. The same will apply with sensing and intuition. But these aren't enemies. Your thinking and your feeling shouldn't be fighting with one another. They're supposed to be complementing each other. Your intuition, your vision shouldn't have to be fighting with reality. It's meant to be working with reality so that you're both on the same page, same team. These functions are trying to set up the other to win. A man wants the woman to succeed, the woman wants the man to succeed. They shouldn't be fighting one another, trying to undermine one another, trying to do everything on their own without any assistance from the other. Like a competition, like I don't need you, I could do everything by myself. No, because you're going to fail. They need each other, and they're supposed to work together. They're supposed to complement each other. And when they do work together properly, like how they should, and they're balanced out, then together they are formidable. They are so much more successful than they would be on their own. And so this is why it's very important that we recognize the imbalances in our mind, where it is we lean more on, because we're scared to lean on the things that cause us anxiety, for instance. So in this case, we if you're an INFJ, you would tend to want to lean on your intuition because you're very skilled, you're very used to it. You try to refrain from having to bother with your sensing. Well, that's the total opposite of what you should be doing. Face your fears, face your insecurities, face your uncomfortableness. Do what's hard, do what's malnourished, do what's weak. You need to build up the strength in the weaker areas. So ease off your steroid filled biceps and start doing some leg work. You've been skipping out on leg day, so you need to do that. And when you do that, you'll be much more proportionate. Hoping that makes sense. And I'm hoping I'm not losing people too much. So that's the general gist of what I'm saying. You don't need to worry about the 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 additional fluff I'm talking about. Just get the general concept down. And then from there we can move forward and not get so tied up with what does SI mean exactly compared to SE, and what's all this about? It's if you're interested in that, we can go into that, but for the purposes of where I want to take this, to help the guys out there, it's not necessarily something you need to know, at least at this stage. You just need to be aware that things are connected. There should be a balance. If you're having problems in life, that's a clue, that's a sign that there is an imbalance somewhere in the way that you're thinking. And so when we can work out where this imbalance is, we can then rectify it. All right. So I'll leave it at I'll have a quick look at the comments. Hey GM, good to see you here. Lord Sauce, great to see you here as well. Woody, great, good. All right. Okay, I've pretty much finished my presentation. I'm Johnny Midnight's here, JR's here. Great to see you guys. Any particular quick bingers? Great to see you here. Seraphim. Oh, can we combine all 4 graphs in one and call it daddy issue? Wrong chat. Could you combine all 4 graphs into one? Well, they weren't graphs, diagrams. You could theoretically combine all 4, I suppose. You do use all 4 of these functions. So it's the way these differ in people is the arrangement and where they're placed. So if you look on the left, you see how NI is big and prominent. That's the leading function for the INFJ and the INTJ. Now, just because they have it as number 1 function doesn't mean no one has intuition. Everyone has intuition. Like for the ISFJ and the ISTJ, they have intuition, but theirs is at number 4. So they only got a baby intuition. They're not very good at it. And instead, what they have as their dominant leading function, their number 1, is sensing. Okay. Now, if you're trying to work out what kind of person you're dealing with, if you listen as they're talking, ask yourself the question, where is the biggest gap in their cognition? Is the biggest gap between their thinking and their feeling, or is it between their intuition and their sensing? Now, wherever the biggest gap is, that will give you a little clue. Not saying it's for definite, but it will give you a first indication of which is their first and 4th function, which is the lead function, and which is the strongest function, their dominant first, and which is their weakest, their 4th, because that is the biggest gap. That's where you're going to see the biggest dissonance or inconsistency or disconnect, even whether maybe they're talking so much about their vision and their concepts, but they've got nothing statistical, no actual receipts or proof to back anything up. They're adverse to it. They hate them. You ask them for a bit of proof, and they have some sort of, they're in terror about it, and they quickly run off intuition and try and say to you, oh, don't worry about the details, we'll just stick with the intuition. They you know, forget we don't even go there. Well, then you've got an idea, right? You know, I could start mapping you out a little bit, and then you look at so how's their thinking and their feeling, and you go, okay, yeah, their thinking is their thinking is out of whack. They're thinking crazy stuff, but then so is their feelings. Their feelings out of whack and is crazy as well. Well, that's consistent. They balance out. So you can kind of guess, even though they're kind of crazy and out of whack and whatever, but you see the balance and go, right, those two functions must be in the middle then, you know. But let's say it's a different scenario. Let's say their intuition and their details are pretty well balanced. They have a bit of uh, conceptual ideas, and they can handle details. They don't freak out about this, and they can jump backwards and forwards from different mindsets or modality, right? They're not too phased by having to switch from intuition to sensing. So, okay, that probably indicates that those are their middle functions then, and you would expect, therefore, a big discrepancy between their thinking and their feeling. So then you start looking at their thinking and feeling, and you go, right, which one do they feel more comfortable with, and which one do they freak out about? And you go, okay, there definitely is an imbalance here. Now, which one is it they freaking out about? Is it when they start talking about their logic? Right. Well, there's a good indication that their thinking perhaps is their fourth function then, and their hero is feeling. Their number one function. They run off their feelings all the time and try and pretend that thinking doesn't matter, doesn't need to be equated in this formula, and they pretend it doesn't exist. And you see this much bigger problem, separation between the two. And as such, if you are a type who happens to have your thinking and your feeling at those polar opposites, 1 and 4, then those are the types of people who will have the biggest problems when it comes to identity and how the tribe thinks and feels, how they fit in with the rest of people, because it's so far apart. How they think about themselves and what they think about the tribe aren't balanced out, you know. So they're fine with their vision and their where they're grounded in reality. Their middle two is their identity and the tribe, which is most far apart. So the four types here on the screen, they don't have that issue. Their thinking and the tribe, really, this is when you look at the I and the E part of it. But either way, the I, introversion is where you're thinking about yourself. Extroversion is where you're thinking about the tribe. But self and tribe are pretty well balanced. They're in the middle, and they can switch between the two fairly easily. 1 minute they can talk about themselves, what I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that. What does the tribe care about? How do we get harmony with the tribe? Okay, and they can go backwards or forwards. It's when you start talking about facts and details. They're okay with the IS types are okay with facts and details, and they'll freak out once you start talking about the consequences and the ramifications, the probabilities and outcomes. Give me a prediction, give me some solutions of what let's talk about the multiverse. And this is where they would freak out and panic. They won't like to talk about that, and they'll say, no, how about oh, look, I've done a diagram, would you like to look at my diagram instead? You know. And it's the opposite for the the INJs. You know, they're all about the concepts. Oh, look, I've got multiverse or future predictions and probabilities. I've run simulations. Yes. You know, we're fine with connections and patterns and things. Oh, you got some actual real world examples you want to show me? Oh no, I don't really want to. I don't care for that too much. Please get that away from me. You mean we haven't slept all day and it's time to go to bed? Ah, man, do I have to? So that kind of stuff. But in terms of their identity, same thing. They're okay. Like, okay, these are my thoughts. These are what the tribe feels. Fine. I can switch in between. I can handle that. Or this is what the tribe is thinking about, and this is how I feel about what they're thinking. I feel like I don't care what the tribe has to say. I don't like them or whatever. Doesn't really matter. But they are balanced out. They're not freaking out when some work, some task is given to them. Here you go, INTJ. Here's something for you to think about. And I'll go, yeah, no problem. Here, all right, let me think about that. Okay, INTJ, here's something for you to feel about. And I'll go, yeah, I'll feel about that. I'm not going to tell you how I feel. It's none of your business, but I'm okay with that. I've got no problems with how I feel. Right, no biggie. Right. Okay, INTJ, here's some real world stats, or here's some real world life in your face. You got a parking ticket. You double parked outside. Ah, crap. I didn't think I was. Oh no, you mean I got a fine? Oh man, that's a headache. That's a nightmare. I don't want to have to deal with that. Yeah, and by the way, because you didn't bother buy any cat food for your cat's dead. Oh man, I didn't expect my cat to be dead. What? I thought they could live for a bit longer than that. Why did they? So you can see how life catches them off guard. They weren't prepared for it because they weren't really thinking about the details of life. They were too busy living about the big picture of like, oh, one day I'll buy my cat the cat palace. I'll save all my money and buy the cat palace for my little kittens, and they can have little baby cats, and we can have a whole litter of cats, and I'll name some of them. I'll name them after the samurai pizza cats. And while they're daydreaming about their future cats, the ones that they've actually got have died because of because they were forgotten about. Yeah, so that's how they get caught off guard, and that's their life problem. That's the problem they have in life is the surprise of reality reminding you, yeah, by the way, uh your house caught fire while you were away, and here's the bill. It's like, oh man, I'm stressed out. Okay, so we can start identifying where our problems are coming from, and therefore you can predict what kind of problems you would have in the future. So for the INFJ and the INTJ, you can see that if they were more mindful of life's nice little surprises, it likes to kick you unexpectedly. You can accommodate. You can factor that in. You can have money set aside for in case you get a penalty charge, or you would make sure you double up on your cat food so that your cat doesn't die of starvation. So you can mitigate against the hazards. And for the ISTJ and the ISFJ, these two over here on the right, their problem in life will be more of, hey, dudes and dudettes, you need to start thinking about some of your future. What are you going to do with this money that you've been counting and stacking? Like, have you got any plans with this money, or are you just saving it for the sake of saving it? How about you start thinking of next week? How about you start having some long-term and short-term goals, do some planning, think of some possibilities and outcomes, and what's going to happen if you get ill. Have you got any medication in the cupboard for when you get ill? Have you got food stocked up in case of food inflation? Are you a bit like a prepper? Have you done any prepping work? Have you prepared in any way for disaster of the future? Well, I suppose that might be more of a sensing issue. Yeah, maybe that might be more of a sensing issue because their sensory would handle that. But you get the idea. You start honing in on their problematic areas of life, and if you listen to them with their anecdotal stories, you might see a pattern where it's like, yeah, caught you off guard, didn't it? Because you didn't think it was going to happen. Well, what kind of problem, what category of problem does that fit into? Right, that was a lack of thinking. Maybe your thinking is fourth then, and that's why you were blind to seeing that problem. Or maybe it was an emotional problem. and their life is littered with emotional problem after emotional problem after emotional problem, never really addressed properly, well, then you could be like, well, maybe that's where the problem is then. Anyway, I think I've jabbered on long enough. I think you should get the idea of what I'm saying by now. I hope you do. Oh, you want to hear some more? Okay, right. So I took. Okay. So that INTJ assessment is me precisely. Okay. Let's have some fun. Let's have a conversation with ourselves. So my NI, for example, my vision, NI, me, my dream. All right, Billy has a dream. What's his dream? He wants to share information with everyone so that it would help people self-improve and develop. Okay, Effie, go tell the people. Make sure everyone is harmonious and we're all in agreement. That's your don't bother with any logic because that's for thinking to deal with. Your job here is just to make sure everyone values this presentation the same way that we value this presentation. Make sure they like it because we like it. TI says you're being silly. This isn't logical, and no one really cares what you think. SU says, yeah, we don't really have the data to support this. All you've got is silly little slides and StreamYard. Then my INTJ buddy over here hears this conversation. Oop, that's not INTJ. Where's INTJ? Over here, right? Their NI starts ringing in their head, and they go, ooh, I hear Billy's NI vision. Is that a good vision? Can I agree with this vision? Yeah, for the most part. Okay, it's a pretty decent vision. Yeah, I can see how that works. Okay, so their NI starts to communicate to their TE. Okay, TE, for the tribe, logically, is this vision going to play out? And the response from TE will be like, this is too deep. There's too much information here. I'm confused. I'm bewildered. I don't really understand. So we're in the dark. FI says, yeah, I'm feeling really confused. I don't like how this is making me feel. And SC looks around and goes, yeah, the looks on everyone's faces is everyone is lost and looking to go home. We're wondering why we're here. We were promised free food. There is no food. We're hungry. FI sort of echoes back and says, yeah, I think this might be a bit of a waste of time. I don't think anyone's liking this. And TE says, yeah, this ain't really making anything any better. Not sure how this is going to help with the big picture of the vision at all. And then NI gets angry and says, you're all failures, or not you're all failures, but you all let me down. Like, this is part of the vision, man. We're on team vision here. And you guys are failing in your departments. You need to get this to work. So instead of, then they'll look at Billy's NI and be like, Billy, you're going nuts talking about this. No one sees this but you. Is that right? Okay. And that's where I say, I'm sorry, everyone. I'll try and not to go overboard. I did it again. So we'll leave it there. Oh, Red Scout. Yeah, it's actually pseudoscience. Well, yeah. I mean, of course, yeah. But just because it's pseudoscience doesn't mean we can't use it as a model to help us understand. Like, it doesn't have to be exact, it doesn't have to be precise, it doesn't have to be accurate or anything like that. But the idea of what it's trying to suggest, that there is a dialogue of between the cognitive functions to derive a decision, how to process information, how to wrap our heads around things, how we could be in two minds at the same time, how we can have a cognitive dissonance and can't quite decide. So this model, even if it's inaccurate, can help us to visualize or at least be aware that something like this could be taking place, which could help explain why it is we sometimes have such troubles making a decision sometimes, um, um, and how we can overcome these challenges. There's another quick little lesson I can point out here, for example, as an example. Let's say you're in mixed minds between your thinking and your feeling. Your heart and mind are in balance, but yet they cannot decide what to do. How are you going to make a decision then? Well, what you're going to do at this point is introduce the other functions. So this no longer becomes a decision between your heart and your mind. This becomes a decision that is based between your heart and your mind plus some reality plus some intuition. And so you're making a much more complete decision, factoring in all the variables instead of just trying to minimize it into yes or no binary thinking. This is no longer black and white thinking if you're using all of your brain. Why else has God given you like, what's the point of having a complete brain if you're not going to use all of your brain? But yeah, it is pseudoscience. And with this pseudoscience, we're going to hack into some trauma understanding in the coming upstreams. So we'll end it here. Otherwise, I'll be here all forever. It's been an hour, and I'm sure that was enough to take on. So thank you all for being here. Any questions, any problems, any comments and feedback in general to help? I would actually, it would be helpful for me, so then I know when I'm being too much. Just say, don't worry about my feelings. Just say, Billy, too much, or whatever. Dial it down. Leave a comment, suggestions, any questions. If you're a bit unsure, maybe what your type is, or you want some whatever, you want to reach out in private or something, by all means. I don't have a certification in this, but I can, I might be able to give you a few pointers and clues. You got nothing to lose. But yeah, thank you for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.